Hey everyone, Matt from Soundrolling.com. Thank you for joining me for Sound Chat 52, 2018, rocking it hard on the old Sound Chats. Great to give you guys kind of more context on loads of different people working in loads of different aspects of the sound industry in general, relating to kind of film sound predominantly. And yeah, so today we have Andrew Jones. How's it going, Andrew?
It's going pretty good.
Awesome, man. And you're over in the West Coast, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles.
Nice.
So
awesome.
right in the heart of Hollywood.
Amazing. So how this works for the people watching, basically you can ask questions while we're live, which is right now. Again, if you're watching the video, you won't see a little live icon. And yeah, ask those questions, get it in the comments, and we'll be feeding those in. But Andrew, the best place to start is always kind of the beginning. So why don't you just give us a kind of how you got into the industry and into sound?
Well, I got in back in 2004. I was going to college for this, and I started to get phone calls pretty quickly while I was still in college. From there, I got a phone call. I think I don't remember the year. But I got a phone call from a radio station saying, "Hey, we want you to come and work for our radio show. We need a video producer for the radio." And I said, "Yeah, okay." And this was probably 07, if I think about it. This is probably 07, so this is a decade ago. And I mean, no one was web streaming, radio back then. No one was even doing video clips for radio. That was a very YouTube had just kind of started, and that was not even a major platform for anyone back then. So we started there. About a year and a half, 2 years into it, I got laid off. That was the heart of the subprime mortgage, bubble crush. So we had major advertisers pull out. And when that happened, we were a radio show of probably about 26 people to produce this morning show. We were on 115 radio stations, so fairly sizable radio show. And when we had, I think it was 5 radio stations that could not pay their monthly subscription to host the show on their channel, we had to repo that signal. We lost JCPenney's annual account for advertising. So a lot of money just went out the door, and they immediately were like, we have to start downsizing. And the first person to get downsized is the internet guys. We had a couple of the internet crew and video people. We all got laid off all on the same day. From there, I was like, what do you do when you get laid off from radio? You go back to school, because radio does not account for anything in life. No one cares that you worked in radio. So I went back to school. That lasted all of 2 months till I got another phone call. This phone call was to teach as a lab instructor at a trade school for filmmaking. Did that for about a year. It was okay. Didn't mind it. Didn't absolutely love it though. From there, I went into just freelance. Camera work, started to work in weddings, which I lived at the time. I was living in Dallas, so weddings were very, very popular. That took me into corporate video, because as people get married, we had some pretty wealthy clients, and wealthy clients own companies, and they liked our wedding videos and said, "Hey, could you do our corporate video?" And yeah, okay, I can do your corporate video too. And that kind of got me into doing camera work and really high-end videography for corporations, and doing like the fancy about us videos. Like, what's about our company? Here's our founder telling you,
I love this.
talking head garbage. But that got me into sound again, because, when you're doing videography work, so often you are the sound person, you're the cameraman. You may have a PA/grip who can help you set up some lights. And you may have the client, asking the questions of their CEO from the marketing department, kind of acting as the producer liaison kind of role. And then slowly those corporate videos got more and more fancy in their roles, and I went more camera department at the time. I was not in sound. From there, I got to a couple of reality shows I worked on in camera. I worked in a couple of other feature type situations where I was in camera. But I then had the urge. My wife and I said, we're moving to Los Angeles, and we're just going to go make it in Los Angeles because she's also a producer. So she got a job offer. We started to make the drive out. We're driving out to Los Angeles, and the job that hired her to let us move to Los Angeles fell through on the actual drive to Los Angeles. Like, I think we were in like Phoenix, Arizona, halfway, and they're saying, oh no, you don't have a job. And we're like, we don't have an apartment back in Dallas. Let's just keep moving forward. I get to Los Angeles. At this point, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'll just get jobs as camera. And then every single job I see posted says, we're looking for a DP that owns their own red. And I'm like, no, you're looking for a free red rental, and you don't seem to care too much who the camera person is. That's what you really want. And it was really hard to come from being a camera person DP in Dallas, where DSLRs and just good video cameras, was more than enough to make a living, to move out to LA where you can't even show up with a 5D. Like, no one cares. No one cares in this town. So I got on one shoot as a grip because I just took it because I needed the work. And I show up, and the sound mixer rolls up with his cart. And it was like a Home Depot cart. Like, it was like janky. And he's got I think looking back, it probably was like a 442 and an H4n kind of a setup, real simple, and a 416. And I'm looking at this guy going, that's all you brought? Like, that analog gear? Like, we're shooting with a C300 over here. We've got LED tungsten, LED modded airy lights and some crazy, DMX wireless going all over the set. And this guy shows up with a 442. And I'm talking to him, and he goes, yeah, but you know what? My gear's paid off. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me think about this. He goes, I'm making nothing but profit today on this kit rental. And I'm like, you got a kit rental on this old analog gear? I want to know more about you. And for the rest of that shoot, which was a week long, I set, because once we were set up in the grip, it was all on studio. Like, the grip's just set in the green room, but I decided to sit next to the sound mixer because I'm like, this guy's making money and not spending a lot to make that money. And I knew enough from sound from my corporate video days that I was like, I can do sit-down interviews. I can do little shorts and corporate work. We were using pretty much roughly the same kind of gear in the corporate video world. We weren't doing, short films and narratives on that kind of gear. We hired people for that. So I'm just sitting here going, okay, what do I need? What do I need to buy? What do I need to do? And immediately after that gig, I get a call back to Waco, Texas, to go work on the reality show Fixer Upper. I get hired on as a DIT and kind of a general swing position for the show. From there, I got this mindset in my head. I live in Los Angeles, but I need to make the shift from camera to sound. And I'm just bugging the sound guy on the reality show. What are you doing? What's this? And he goes, oh, this is Moleskin. At the time, this was years into my career. I've been doing it at this point since nearly a decade at this point. I still had never even heard of Moleskin. And I'm just sitting there learning everything I can from the sound guy on this reality show. He's showing me how to do the buttonhole techniques. He's showing me everything. And I'm just soaking it all in. To me, it's 2 months of sitting on a very small crew. That reality show probably only had a crew of 6, most shoots. Yeah. Wow. For a big reality show like that, we only had a crew of maybe 6. So like, I'm just sitting there soaking it all in. I fly back to LA, and from there, it's sound only. And I buy all the gear I need. I then sit and start to try to get sound gigs. And that's it. I mean, that was kind of how I started. It was a very windy path, but in doing so, I think the way I write the blog post, it comes from a sound mixer who knows the other departments and also knows all the different flavors of video production, from guys who don't need a sound mixer. And I do believe that there are productions that we definitely don't need to be on set, like car commercials. It's just a lav on a talking head most often. It's just a little
or
used car
even
dealership.
just you just have a mic stand, right?
Yeah, it's usually a guy just standing next to a car telling you to come down to his car dealership. I don't want to be down there. Those aren't fun shoots, and they don't have a lot of budget. And if this, videographer is trying to make, his living, he needs to do sound on his own. So there are products geared toward them. And I recognize that because I used to be that. And I think when I write the blog post, I'm coming at it from an angle that thinks about sometimes the lower level productions that we're not necessarily on anymore, or we haven't been on those types of productions in over a decade, because some of us are getting really big phone calls now. And I can still remember doing all that stuff. And I try to remember those kinds of people that need sound advice and they need tips and tricks to get the best audio, even when they don't have the demands that the big productions have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it sounds like in your journey as well, you're just it's all about kind of practicality, right? You could have gone out and you could have straight away said that you were a DP, try to buy a red, try to go straight into shooting feature films, that kind of thing. But then the different skills from going to weddings to corporates to then, again, it's still storytelling at the end of the day. But it sounds like practicality was kind of a major point for you in terms of both just career options and just work in general.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the story options, I mean, when you look at a modern wedding video from the high-end productions, and if you're watching this, I don't know how many people are watching this. There's a couple of studios I suggest that people go out and look at, and it's like Hakeem Sons is a great one, Still Motion is another, and you look at them and they are cinematic gold. I mean, some of these guys now, they'll shoot a wedding on a 1.2 with this crazy bokeh, and you just sit there and you just want to soak in all this beautiful cinematography at a live event wedding. And some of these high-end ones will actually hire sound mixers to do the wedding and sit there and plant. I mean, when I did some weddings, we would have 5 cameramen for the wedding, and I might walk away with 30 tracks of audio for the edit. I mean, you can just sit there, and now with these H1s and H4Ns, you sit there and just plant them all over the place. Oh, is there a quartet playing? Plant 2 of them, and we'll try to get 4 tracks of audio across the whole quartet. Drop one underneath the piano so it's out of sight, but you're picking up that piano sound. Maybe someone's doing a reading at a podium. We're dropping plant mics at the podium. I mean, I didn't realize I was doing plant miking at the time, but I was, and we were just dropping not just plant mics, but we were dropping whole recorders. Now, if I were to do it all over again, it would be like I'd be using Zaxcom or electrosonic PDRs and not the Zooms. But yeah, I mean, it's
basically reality. That's like a real reality show, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah. But at the same time, weddings are produced. What most people probably don't realize is the modern day wedding is very produced. There is a wedding coordinator, and their job is the executive producer of the wedding. And if you treat them as such, they can be your number one asset in those kinds of productions. I mean, it was unreal, the amount of production. So going from weddings into reality was actually not that big of a jump. When people in reality hear that you did weddings, some of them will even go, "Oh, I don't want to do that because you only get one shot on the aisle, and you nail it, and you feel really good."
Oh, I think we've lost you there. Hang on back. Apologies for this slight technical difficulties that we are having. Make sure you get in your questions on the side still. and we'll feed those in. We've got quite a lot of people. How about everyone gets in the comments and tells me whereabouts you guys are from? We've got people from Greece, Chicago. Let's see. I wonder if. Oh, 7041. I think the DPA 4071 versus the Sanken is very, very different. Let me see if we can get Andrew back. This is always the thing with live. Live is just tricky.
Hey.
Hey, you back?
I think I'm awesome. Back. Awesome.
No, it's always, that's the problem with doing live sometimes.
You know what, though? I live in Los Angeles, so having brownouts is just something we do.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah. Just losing power. It's what we do.
That's it. So, yes, massively produced wedding videos, so slipping into reality was a lot easier, was where we were kind of taking off. Yeah. And so what's so where do we go from now? So what is your kind of main kind of place that you're kind of focusing on now? So for me, it's kind of the what over here we call creative content, which is now basically just corporate videos, but it's not just a talking head anymore. It's got to be like a talking head on a skateboard, on a whatever. And now, or basically just high-end short films, but everyone's wearing like Nike trainers or something. And then kind of then the short films, feature films, so that kind of film, I call it in general. But what's your kind of main focus in your work now?
So my main focus now is mostly these, I don't know what you would truly call it, these digital online content creators.
Yeah, so that's the creative content. Like that's a generic term now for literally everything.
Yeah, I mean it's, but I'm talking more like your BuzzFeeds, your Vice, your content creators like that they're creating those little Facebook Buzz videos because Facebook, I don't know if a lot of people know this, Facebook is just really pushing that Facebook Watch, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, I can't wait for it to like actually come out to the rest of the world. It's only for you guys in the US at the moment. I really want to test it.
I don't personally like it because it really screws up. Because as soon as it's like if you've ever hit like on a band or a company brand that you like,
yeah.
But imagine also signing up for every push notification that they do without asking for it.
Yay.
Right? Yeah. But at the same time, Facebook has said that they're going to be changing a lot of their algorithms.
Yeah.
So you don't get as much. So hopefully they fix it. They balance, all the notifications versus what we really want. But Facebook Watch is starting to kind of be a real thing, and they're throwing so much money at this. And essentially, they're mostly nonfiction kind of reality style shoots. They're just interesting. I just went to Mexico 2 months ago, and we were there for 5 days shooting, ironically enough, a wedding. But it's a reality show about weddings. So I got hired on and I had a great time. But they paid full rate. They paid for gear rentals. And it's for Facebook. I mean, that was the primary outlet, was to be watched on people's cell phones through Facebook Watch. And because Facebook is actually paying for the content, they're hiring production companies that are then hiring all us, and that money is trickling down. That's a great new revenue stream for a lot of people in our industry. And it's not full scale. It's not like the show that we made was going to be 23 minutes for Hulu, right? Or Netflix. It was a 5-day shoot to produce a 7-minute video.
Wow.
I mean, you want to talk about stress-free. We were overshooting left and right. If we had a little bit of a problem, no one worried because they knew the end video was only going to be 7 minutes.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's nothing. So those kinds of shoots are really what I want to do more of because they're really well done, surprisingly, for online media content. You know, it's not like YouTube series where two blokes get their laptops and point them at each other and sound chat. I mean, it's it's this highly produced content that Facebook wants to push, and they think that people want to watch it. And I don't know if people do, but I know the check, you know, cashes quite nicely in my bank account, and I would love to do more of those. It's kind of some of them are less reality, some of them are not, but I don't mind that kind of content. It really is fun to work on.
Nice. And it sounds like, I mean, there's going to be just more and more of this as well. Like, obviously, Amazon Prime chucking their own thing in. Like, all these outlets, now the internet is literally the middleman for absolutely everything. It's basically television, radio, like with the explosion of podcasts, with the explosion. Like, there's literally just literally more work than ever before. Surely. It's insane. It's great.
Right. My wife and I were talking about this because some producer friends of hers were chatting, and they said stuff like they're worried about the rates going down. And, you know, for the most part, I think rates aren't going down so much as they aren't raising with inflation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because whatever you're working on, you now compete so much more for eyeballs.
Yeah.
For what, you know, we want to do. But at the same time, you know, you've got Apple with their streaming stuff now.
Yeah.
You've got Amazon, you've got Yahoo, which I don't know if Yahoo Studios is still a thing, but I know they tried. You know, Yahoo did. It wouldn't shock me if we see AOL come back and try something again, or if we, you know, with Facebook, if we don't see something. I know Snapchat is trying to do something with this also, where they're doing web series in Snapchat.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much outlets now that you just got to also find out, as the crew you're working on, you know, what kind of deliverable are we really doing?
Yeah, that's it. Because would you, I mean, if it's just for always when any shoot is just for online, there's almost just that thing of like, there's a little less scrutiny in terms of just, it needs, like, literally every single frequency has to be absolutely perfect, because you just know that even if they modded it, fucking 20 million different phones, and then you're always losing the low end, you're always kind of focusing on the voice. So
yeah. But also it's about length of the video. You know, if you get a radio hit, a little RF hit on your wireless radios, it's like, normally on a feature film, you would freak out. You'd be like, okay, write down, I need this wild line, and we maybe do it in ADR, and you take tons of notes. In this, it's like, oh, we got a radio hit. So the video is 2 minutes. What they were saying, was it 100% positive that one sentence is going to make it to that 2-minute video? No? Okay, let's just move on. And it's you've got to, as a sound mixer, you need to be able to actively now listen. So often, you know, as sound mixers, we say we're not listening for content, we're listening for quality. You know, I'm listening between the words to hear what the background noise is doing, all that kind of stuff. And we say that, but for this kind of video where it is short and small, you kind of also need to listen for content in that style, because you may hear some stuff like RF hits, but if it's on a sentence that doesn't matter, don't stop everyone down. It's not your job, you know, to freak out. If it's on something that you know is mission critical because you're you know, helping the crew, because often these crews are smaller. So you as a sound mixer may be helping load, you know, some Pelicans out of the van at the morning, and you just pitch in. It's just what you do on these kinds of shoots. But now, you know, your producer may not be a field tested producer. They may be pretty fresh and new because it's cheaper to hire someone fresh out of college. So they may not know what they just heard was a big deal, you know, especially on their Comtex. You know, there's so many RF hits. It's important for us to really actively be listening because they may not know that the hit that they just heard is really a big deal. And we sit there and go, okay, it's all good. If you heard a little RF hit on your Comtech, no big deal.
Yeah.
You know? And we got to put some real rest assurance into them to let them know that they're probably not going to use that sentence anyway.
Yeah. So it's loads of people are watching, which is great, and so we're getting loads of questions. So I thought I'd start kind of feeding them in. And just off
Why
the
are
back
people
of
watching this? It's just us.
oh, this is what it's about. This is the future. If only I was on Facebook Watch, there would be like millions. But yeah. So I guess the best place to kind of go on from then is that now, because we have all of this kind of let's say new media, new content, that kind of thing. How you Greg Palmer asked, where do you find jobs, and how are you growing in a kind of organic way? I mean, for me, it's kind of a weird kind of referral slash like friend of a friend said this name. So how about for you?
So how do you find jobs? This is the most probably going to be the most asked question. How do you get work in this industry? Relationships. As you said, a friend of a friend. I mean, where I find a lot of my jobs is other sound mixers. Knowing who's in your town, um, is really important, because let's say they get double booked, they can't take it. Well, either they're going to do one of two things. They're going to say to the producer, "Hey, I can't take it. See ya. Bye." And like the producer then has to go start cold calling people. Or the sound mixer is going to say, "Hey, I can't take it, but you know what? My buddy is available. Here's his number. I'm referring you to him. And he's available. He can definitely take it, and he'll do the same rate that I do." And that's the other point of getting hired, is when you do get hired from a referral, talk to your buddy to find out what the rate is that he's getting. We're so sometimes afraid to talk money. But in the film industry, we have to. We definitely should, because you don't want to step on someone's toes by saying, "Oh, I'll do it for less." And then all of a sudden that producer calls your buddy back. "Yeah, can you do it for this number?" And he goes, "What the hell? Where did you get that number from?" And now you've ruined, your referral and your friendship. You don't want to be the person in town undercutting everyone. It's a quick way to get blacklisted from everyone's referral list. That kind of conversation needs to happen. We so often call this the film industry, or the film business, and the second word in that is business. This is business, and at the end of the day, making sure you're a team player with all of the sound mixers in your town, and same goes for camera, but cameramen are not going to listen, because they will undercut each other every single chance they can, because they brought a brand new lens, they brought a brand new camera, and they want to go test it out, and they don't want to get paid for their test. So I'll bring out my brand new camera for free. And that's how you end up with people asking, "Oh, hey, I need a DP with a red for free." And you get people like me going, I'm leaving this. This is terrible. But sound mixers aren't like that. Sound mixers are very much a brotherhood in that we care about keeping the rates high for everyone. There's not as many of us, so we are always in demand. So making sure that you're up with everyone in your town, in your community, the best place to do that is Facebook groups. If you type in sound mixer and then the name of your city or the closest big city, you'll probably find a local sound mixer group. And if not, type in the name of your state or province. I say province. What do you guys call it there in England? Like, do you guys have? I don't know.
Yeah, we have counties, so we're not
like
even the whole country, even all like 4 countries are not one state, so as big as one state. So we just have counties. But yeah, but
Okay.
regions would do, I guess.
Yeah, so regions. So like, it's important that you type in that kind of stuff in the Facebook and become one of those groups, or meetup.com, which has like groups you can meet up. If you don't have one for sound mixers, join one that like type in filmmaker as a generic term and then the state you live in or province you live in, and you can find groups like that. And that's a great way to get connected with people in your community that are making things happen. And then from there, find out who the sound mixers are in that group. Take them out to coffee. I'm actually about to put together a little meetup for some people here in Los Angeles. I'm going to throw out to people, and we're going to go out and get cigars because coffee is something that everyone does. I want to be a little different. So I'm like, cigars, let's go get cigars and go lounge around and drink whiskey and cigars. I mean, the guy who's going to go drink and have a cigar with you, that's the kind of guy you want to hang out on set. And that's the other rule when it comes to how do you get jobs. At the end of the day, you need to remember that you're not special. The gear you own is purchasable. It's a capital purchase. The guy getting right out of college can buy the exact same gear you can, right? So what you're bringing is nothing special. The only thing special that you're bringing is your personality. We talk about, when we talk about rates, going back to rates, you might say, oh, hey, I work for 600 for 12, and we base it in Los Angeles on a 12-hour day, and they expect you to work all 12 hours. So that means I'm going to be on the phone, or I'm going to be on set with you for 12 hours. Do I want to hang out with you for 12 hours? Well, if I do, I'm going to hire you. I mean, because you're not bringing anything else. Like, placing microphones on people is a technique, and it's a learnable technique, I believe. I don't think there's a lot of like mysticism skill that you have to be born with. I think it's a very learnable technique. The thing that you have to bring, that you have to kind of be born with, is your personality. So how do you get jobs? You get to be the fun guy on set. You get to be the guy who does it fast and doesn't hassle everyone because you slowed everyone down. How you carry yourself on the set that you are today is exactly why you get the jobs tomorrow. Because people remember that. You don't know who the next producer is going to be. If the cameraman, in Dallas, if the DP got the phone call from a client, he's going to produce it, and he's going to hire a DP friend of his, and he's just going to wing it and be the producer director for the day. And that's how often, those kinds of very small corporate shoots work. Whoever got the phone call is the production company. There isn't a set structure, and you never know who's going to be the next person hiring you. So the way you act today will reflect on who hires you tomorrow.
Yeah,
I mean, that's it.
Absolutely everything, I think, as well. Yeah,
it's absolutely everything. So meet people, be a team player, and bring a great attitude to set, and you're going to get hired left and right.
Perfect. Well, let's move straight on then to the type of gear that you're running for the productions that you're working on.
Okay. Running. Well, it's definitely a Zoom product. I think everyone kind of can understand why it has to be a Zoom product. Right now, actually, what everyone's listening to on my side, I don't know how good it's going to sound because it's encoding live and doing all of this other stuff, but we're actually using a Zoom F4 in the audio interface mode. I've got a Aperture Deity microphone set up above me, and that's what you're listening to right now. I typically bring a Deity to sets where I know there's going to be water, where I know there's going to be a lot of sand and nastiness. Typically, when I'm doing just a lot of just general shoots, I'm bringing my 416 still. I'm not bringing anything fancier than the 416. I've got a Shep's clone that I built that I will bring for a hypercardioid. More often than not, I'm bringing the F8. I hardly ever use my F4. My F4 really sits in my bag as my backup. There's this new K-Tech bag. I'm actually falling in love with it. Nice. It's currently being set up right now so I can see my meters. And it's in the kickstand mode, so I really love that K-Tech style. Before that, I was using the Zoom bag for a very long time. I think for nearly 2 years. I do have the FRC8 controller, so when I do feature work in short films, I've got the expansion. So, I mean, I'm using a lot of the same standard stuff that everyone is. For lavaliers, I'm using Point Source Audio's CO-8WL, blah, blah, right? I mean, it's the COs, the CO8, not the COS11, right? See? But it's the same size. It's actually a little bit smaller than the COS11. But I'm using Point Source Audio's equipment. I really love that. When it comes to little things like that, I'm still using Moleskine. Yesterday, I was using my own concealers that I made, nice. Field testing those. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the just standard stuff. I mean, when you join these Facebook groups, going back to that, you're going to see photos of what sound mixers are using. You know, as soon as you see a photo from a sound mixer, go look up everything you don't recognize in the bag, you know? And as soon as you see something you don't recognize, look it up, look at the specs, look at how it's being utilized in his bag, message the person and ask them, hey, why are you using Electrosonics LTs 400 or SMs, right? Like, ask questions of your fellow sound mixers when it comes to the equipment. And that's kind of, I mean, I know I've posted one or two posts about gear I've used on shoots, but I try not to stick too much to that because it is so standard.
Yeah. And Alejandro asked, have you used the F12, Zoom F12?
I think he doesn't mean F12. I think he means L12.
Probably L12.
The L12, because the L12 is that new live track thing that Zoom came out that's supposed to be kind of a combination between the R16 Zoom product and the Zoom F8.
Okay.
I've not utilized it. It doesn't really appeal to me because it's missing a lot of metadata and timecode. And when you work on the productions I'm working on, metadata and timecode are mission critical. I mean, there's no way around those. So it's just not really set up for what we do. But for bands, people I know that do music, they say they love it. They're loving that. If you are talking about the F12, meaning an upgraded F8, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's also people saying when is there going to be an F10? It's all just about more inputs, really, isn't it? That's
yeah,
the deal.
I mean, the question is, what are you not able to do on an F8? I mean, at a certain point, you know, I look at people who are like, oh no, I need the 688. I need the Diva 24. And it's like, well, what are you working on? Oh, well, I'm working on, you know, episodic television. Okay, so you've got a cast of 7 and 2 boom operators and a couple of plants, right? Okay, but for the most part, after 6 inputs, those last 2, I don't think I've ever filled up all 8 of my F8, in all honesty. And at the same time, I don't think you want to. At a certain point, if you're not getting it on the boom, why are you worried about, you know, wireless microphone number 9? You know what I mean? It's like, just get it on the boom. Make sure they get coverage in the close-up and your boom operator gets in there. Or if you're the boom operator, you make sure they get close-up so you can get the coverage. I mean, we're so worried about making sure the wide shot, you know, everyone's mic'd up in the wide. It's like, yeah, but are we going to go in for coverage? Are we going to use the wide for like the first 3 seconds of the scene and then cut in? You know, we're not going to cut to the wide, you know, in the middle of a deep conversation, especially something that's dramatic or a piece about romance, you know, that's just not what they're going to do. So we're so worried about, you know, everyone's got to be wired. And it's like, well, that's not true. So, I mean, when's the F10 coming out? When's the F12 coming out? I mean, it's how many of you guys are actually maxing out your F8s? I mean, very, very, very few. So, you know, what I'm glad is they're still giving updates to the F8. And max processing chip to get the maximum out. I mean, it was only just 2 months ago we got the Ambio upgrade.
Yeah.
2 or 3 months ago we got the Ambio upgrade. The F4 last month got an Ambio upgrade. So they're still developing firmware. So I'm not sure, other than inputs, what the F10 is really going to have, or the F12 would even bring to the table, that you may not be able to do on the F8. I mean, there's very little hardware upgrades that need to happen, I think, that are missing. So until people are really maxing out these F8s, I think we've got a little bit down the road before we actually see an upgrade.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it's developed. Because do you work directly with? Are you like working for Zoom? Like, what's your relationship, just to establish that?
Okay, so I do what you could call loose product development. I say loose because I can't say the products that have been developed. that I know about. There is a couple coming out that I remember being on conference calls and in emails a year and a half ago when they were just like specs. It was just a spec list for the product, and there wasn't even a design for it. And they were just like, "What do you think of the specs, Andrew?" And I'm like, "Okay, these need to change. This needs to get added. This functionality definitely needs to happen." And then they'll contact me 6 months out from launch and go, "Hey, so here's kind of the firmware. What do we need to still add? What needs to get fixed? What bugs exist in that firmware?" And we kind of go from there. The recent campaigns for the F series videos, like the FRC8, the F4, there's some more coming out in the near future. I was actually a part of the video productions also. So we've got the F4 video I just star in. I just showed up and I was just a figure placement to be the role of sound mixer. And then for the FRC8, again, I'm just the model. But from there, they didn't even send out product specialist. Samuel at Zoom was like, "Hey, Andrew, we've sent the product out. You'll know how to utilize it and everything. Make sure the photos kind of are realistic. It's your job to make sure the photographers and the people on set are using it in a realistic manner. We don't want to get butchered for looking goofy." And that's what I did. And on these last couple, I was actually part of the storyboard team, the concept for the commercials, as well as I directed one of them for some upcoming releases. And that's kind of going to be really, I think, exciting for a lot of people. And as I've said, because I know people are probably freaking out in the comments, probably saying stuff like, "Did he just say an F810 is coming out?" And it's like, I've said since the beginning of January that January is going to be a good month for Zoom users. I don't think any Zoom user is going to feel like they've been forgotten about. And I don't think anyone's going to regret any purchases they made in January. So don't worry. If you bought an F4 last week or bought an F8 last week, you didn't waste your money. You're still going to be very happy by the end of this month.
Well, that's the important thing, the support for actually the kind of core users, right? For their whole...
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and the Zoom crowd is definitely a unique crowd. I mean, there's so many people. You'll see it in the online forums. They're like, "Oh, the Zoom F8 is crap." And I'm like, "What do you own?" He goes, "I own a Zaxcom." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're not our market." Like, the guy who's going to own the Zaxcom and spend $10,000, on all the wireless and all the receivers and the recorder and everything, he's never going to buy $1,000 recorder. That was not ever in his wheelhouse. And it's like, that's fine. Zoom doesn't want to sell you $1,000 recorder if you were going to spend $10,000, because one, you're going to be one of those people that are going to advocate for how terrible it is, and you're going to be an owner, and that gives you credibility to say how terrible it is. But as a Zaxcom user or as a Sonosax or Canton user, it's like you guys spend so much more money, and that's fine. But at the same time, you were always excited to spend that kind of money. That's fine too. The F user is kind of, it's the indie filmmaker. It's the small projects. It's the corporate video sound mixers. It is the guy who needs to record a lot of tracks, but may not necessarily need to do a stereo mix on site. How many reality shows it's, 7 wireless and a boom on a 788, and they're just tracking tons and tons of wireless without actually having to worry too much about what the stereo sounds like, because they're going to sound, mix the whole thing in post. And that's okay too. Shoots like that, it works. If you're trying to do a TV commercial and you're trying to get a stereo track to a client and you've got 14 clients on set on headsets, no, you're going to need the FRC8 and you're going to need the expansion kind of stuff in order to make it work. The core product may not work for you, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think the main thing, what we've seen in terms of the jump, is just they had just like with cameras, as soon as there was like the high-end cameras, there was basically still people running around with like tape or something. And then we started having then the stills cameras and the 5D and blah, blah, blah. And ever since then, literally everything in between like 0 and 100% is just being filled because of so many different scenarios.
100%. If you look, before the F8 came out, and I know this because I looked at almost buying one. Thank God I didn't regretted that purchase, but I was looking at the Tascam DR70.
Yeah.
And if you think before the 70, the DR70, there was the 60, which does not have ergonomics. It's kind of rubbish. It's a glorified H4n. So you had either this glorified H4n meant for camera, and then you had the 633, and it's like one is $200, one is $3,000. Is there nothing in the middle? Well, there was like the Tascam 82, which is like $2,000.
Yeah. Or like the Roland R4.
Roland R44, which no one wants anyway.
Or R8.
Or you had the Tascam DR, the DR680, which was still kind of a musician's recorder and not really meant for filmmakers, because I think its outputs were like RCA. And it's like, okay. So there was like literally nothing in the middle between those two. You had the 82, the Tascam 82, which is expensive for what you really get in that bulky size. Or you had the 60, and there was nothing. And then Zoom came in the middle and said, there's probably a market here in the middle. Let's just shoot for dead center, $1,000 F8. And the first year that they came out with the F8, they increased their sales, and the F8 made up, that one product for Zoom, the F8, made up 25% of their sales the very first year. Because the market was there. And they spotted it, and they said, okay, let's go in, let's do this. And that's clearly evident. And it's not like you see people who have 688s losing jobs to F8 users. You know, that's a myth.
Yeah,
no one who's going to...
Again, coming back to that attitude thing we were talking about before, and the gear itself, I mean, without, like, if you need a certain thing like time code, like this, that, and the other. But outside of those kind of very core features, which aren't that many compared to, like, I don't know, a camera that does this range, and I don't know, all this camera stuff seems so much more complicated.
Yeah, when the core needs of the production audio person it's solid time code. Yeah, and even then, when you talk to a lot of people, they're going to be putting on time code boxes anyway. So they don't care too much about what the internal time code is, as long as it has the input. And before the F8, there was nothing that had the input for less than 2,000. So it was like, okay, but it filled that gap, and it filled it beautifully because the market really responded. And I think those jobs, as we were talking earlier, digital exists now in such a large capacity that a lot of those productions could actually use a sound mixer. Well, are they going to use the guy with a $3,000 recorder and the $1,000 a wireless channel? Well, I mean, they've got a budget, but they don't got that kind of budget. They still kind of modest on the gear side of those budgets. A lot of those shows are still shot DSLR because they know with a lot of that content. They're being watched on cell phones. So, I mean, they're not too worried about the gear. And as a end user, someone who watches stuff, I'm kind of excited about that side, at least, because it means the content we're going to be getting online is reality shows aren't being purchased as much by the cable networks. Trying to go for more scripted kind of stuff. They're going to be getting more work because scripted's coming back.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
well, everything's coming back now with this new landscape. It'll be mad.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of work out there. I don't think people should really be all that freaked out about the F8 or the F4 and all that kind of stuff.
So I want to. There's kind of two more questions just regarding the FRC8. So firstly, Blues Clues for Fools asks, USB supports for the F8 question mark instead of just buying an FRC8.
USB control for okay. I know what they're talking about.
Okay.
Even though they didn't mention it. So the question really is, can we plug in a keyboard into our F control or F8 or F4 without the need of the FRC8? No. So the USB port on the F4 and the F8 are not serial USB ports, so they cannot host, which is kind of that they saved money, right? I mean, we look at the product, it's $1,000 recorder. They had this skimp somewhere on some features, and instead of getting rid of time code, they got rid of serial USB. I mean, it's a trade-off when you're at that price point, and I think Zoom traded off in the right direction, and that is they got rid of features that only the super high-end people care about, like plugging a keyboard into the recorder. But at the same time, you've got Bluetooth on there, so you can grab an iPad or an iOS iPhone or an iPod Touch and just type in all the metadata you want, and that does work. But yeah, you're not going to be able to get USB support on these devices without the FRC8 because they added that serial host port to the FRC8.
Right, got you. And so following on from that, then how Alejandro asks, how different is the FRC8 in comparison to the iOS app?
The FRC8 is better. There is something to be said about tactile feel of sliding a fader, looking down, seeing it, touching it, and knowing with just little slight movements of my fingers, I'm adjusting volume. There is something to be said about touch screens that just doesn't feel right. The F8 control app hasn't been updated since version 1 of the firmware. A lot of people have asked, hey, why aren't you guys updating? Why is there no Android support? And since day one, since the F8 came out, I want to say the user base for the control, the iPad app, was like less than 5% of the market of owners. So with that small of a market share within its own community, I mean, we're talking minor amount of people. So getting the update out, getting it, to a lot of people is just not really a big push, considering that it's free and considering that, it costs money to do all that. But just on the base features alone, the menu is enough to get around. The controls still work. I mean, the fader controls, the gain controls, the start, stop, all that kind of stuff works. The range is pretty good. So if you have an iOS device, play with it. See if you like it. If you don't, try to find an audio shop or a friend that has an FRC8 and go and touch and play with that. I love my FRC8. I did a review where I talked about what it gives the user, and it's to anyone who uses the control panels for their recorder. But the FRC8 gives you user controls that you can define yourself. So if there's something that you try to do, like a slate mic, you can add that button right there. If you want something that's quick to metadata, you can just quickly go to metadata, that kind of thing. So it's really helpful if what you're looking for is speed and organization and staying on top of things. I did a feature in October. We used the FRC8, and then the last 2 days I didn't have it, and I felt it. Because we were being real quick and mobile in a small space, and I couldn't set everything up. And it was a pain in the butt to kind of get used to it, especially with that workflow of feature film and having all the controls of your machine with real buttons and not just diving through menus. To lose that control, I felt it. I felt the loss. So I've never been one. I tried the iOS app when it first came out. Just without the tactile feel, I never got into it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. And the final one that just came in was a request from ATAA18. Any chance the guys from Zoom can make an update and make the FRC8 with post fader options?
So I've addressed this with Zoom. I've sent some messages, and they've kind of thrown the ideas around. I don't know where in the development stage firmware is for the FRC8. I do know the firmware can be updated. You'll see that in the menu for the FRC8 on your unit, that there is an option to update the firmware. So they definitely built it in so they could update later. Where any kind of development for any firmware is, I have no idea. It's not really what I do with Zoom. I pitch the ideas and I sit and wait. And if they don't go anywhere, they don't go anywhere. And if they do go somewhere, they may not tell me till like a month out. And then they're like, hey, so what do you think of this real fast? Or how do you, we've added this feature. How would we market this to you guys? How is the community going to take this addition? So it's still, like I said, it's very loosely in that realm of, advisor consultant on the product design. But as for, FRC8, there are some stuff that I would like to see also. Pre-fader, what was the exact question? You wanted pre-fader on the fader?
Post-fader options.
What's all post-fader?
Yeah.
Like it's...
Yeah, I haven't used both, but just reading the question, update to make the FRC8 with post-fader options.
It is post-fader. Those are faders.
Maybe he means pre-fade. I don't know. Maybe he's kidding.
So if he wants the giant fader to act like the trim knob, I don't see it coming out because there's no mixer that on the market that's ever done that. Yeah. So I don't see that, as an option coming. I would love to see more menu programmable stuff into the user controls. Because I think that would be really neat to expand that option. I think I've sent a list off. There were some others I thought would be pretty neat for the FRC8. I can't remember it. But haven't heard anything. So we know that there's some development on other products because of the same developers that make the F series, the R series, they make the Live Track, they make the ARC. So it's just a matter of where they are in their schedules in Japan. So just because the North American team comes up with some ideas, it could be still a year out till the Japanese engineers are scheduled to even touch back on that product. So it's just a matter of time.
Constant R&D and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, Zoom makes nearly 30 products, and that's a lot to upkeep. Without having to discontinue some stuff.
Yeah, of course. You can only have so much, right? So much focus. There's a question from Alejandro, just more about, do you still just work out of a bag, or did you kind of move to a cart setup, and when was that transition?
Okay. Bag cart, kind of a combo.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Similar to what I do. I mean, it's basically you just need a cart you just need a bag with a table for your faders. Right?
Yeah. I mean, really, just buy yourself a rock and roller. I don't know if you guys in the UK have that rock and roller, but they're just little carts. They've got they're flat and they have two things that pop up and it adds a table, and you just put 4 bolts in. It holds the table. It's got 4 wheels. You can roll it around, and the whole thing collapses up and like shrinks. And it can fit into the boot of my car. That's a trunk for us in the United States. I'm trying to get these words in because I said UK. In this answer.
Yeah, you can say boots as well. We put it in the boot.
The boot, the boot.
Sounds Canadian, but.
And the whole thing will shrink up. And I've got a rock and roller cart, and I've got a bag I just put on top, the FRC8. And then to the left is where I'll put all my lavaliers and I'll prep them. And I've got a little top shelf on top of that I can put my lavaliers on top. so that my boom operator and me can kind of work as we loft people up. I put my sides on there. I've got a little portable monitor that I just have on a bendy arm that I just clamp to the table. And when it's all ready to get broken down, I've got two, you can actually see one of them right here, is my milk crates. I've got extra long milk crates that everything just falls into. And when the cart's built up, the milk crates go underneath. Some things still stay in their little, I bought these sorting bags from IKEA. It was like $3 or $4 for like 3 bags of different sizes. And the big ones, I put, on my Neopacks or Ursa straps like you guys have. And I put them all in there. I put my monitor accessories in another one, and just kind of line up in that milk crate. And when I need stuff, I can reach in. When I don't, I just throw it back in the milk crate, and it just slides on the bottom rail system. And honestly, that's a great question about the cart setup. I should probably take a photo, and I'll do a whole blog post this week about my my cart bag setup for Alejandro. Yeah,
I think it was always an interesting thing for me. Like, I never, like, you saw all these people again back in the day with their proper, like, this thing you can basically carry it up a mountain. But for me, it was never. I was always just even just having the Peli case I have. It's quite easy to just close that up, put the bag on top. If you're next to a table, done. Like, that's what
I did yesterday. I have a little collapsible stool. And I've got a it's a Sockler bag. It's a rolling soft bag, but my bag for my audio bag is small enough that I can just put it on top of my soft bag. And then my soft bag acts like that one.
And like the Orca cart as well.
It's kind of like the Orca cart, but it's probably about half the size of the Orca cart.
Yeah,
and I just use that, and it's really basic. And I was in a tiny little studio apartment yesterday on a shoot. It was probably 10 feet by maybe 14 feet total. Very, very small. And I'm set up in the hallway outside because there's no room inside. And I didn't want to be, encroaching on a lot of people. And that's all I took. I didn't take more than I needed to. That's the other thing. So often, these people with giant carts and then follow carts. And then they have a cart for their boom op. And it's like, that's great. And if I'm working on Mad Max, Fury Road, I can get away with that. I've got a whole van I can fill up with sound equipment. But very few of us.
Well, like Mad Max is fucking crazy.
Oh, my Mad Max was insane. Probably the biggest sound department I've ever seen in my life. They wrote articles about it. That's how big it was. No one's writing articles about sound mixers until they start, showing up with 8 788s, and having to build out a full production van that's going at the same speed as the production, on that movie. That's a fantastic, setup they had. But that's so not the standard. That's so not what we're allotted in life more often than not. So I've got just a bag cart. It holds my wireless in the bag. I just set it up, tilt it. Before the K-Tech, I had the Zoom bag, which held 5 wireless and a boom. And I bought from IKEA, a this blue iPad tablet holder thing that's in their office department. And I just literally put my bag around on top of it. It tilted my bag so I could see my screens and see all my wireless. Underneath it, I was able to run some cables and store some tape under there. So I still had access to the flat table space. But now I've got this K-Tech bag, and it's got the built-in kickstand. So, I think that's really what the future is for a lot of us. Is just bag carts.
And what was the name of the video monitor again? Some people were asking. I don't know if you said.
I wrote about it on my blog. I don't know its name. It's like Vil something or other. I don't know. It's the cheapest HDSDI monitor on Amazon.
Nice.
I wrote a blog on it, so I don't remember the model number because they make a couple. But this one has HDSDI and can take 24 hertz signals, which is often the type of signal that comes off of a camera that's 24 frames a second.
Okay.
So it doesn't do 4K. It only does 1080. But Teradek typically kick out 1080 anyway. The monitor, I spent $180 on it. But yeah, go to Wave Report, WAV report.com. And if you do in the search, type in monitor and or LCD, something like that, it should pop up. I don't know the model number off the top of my head.
Awesome. And then because we're coming up to about an hour, these things can literally just go on for days, honestly. So it's kind of really good to just wrap up actually with WAV reports and your how you kind of got into the kind of blogging sphere as well.
Yeah, I got into blogging because because I was on nofilmschool.com one day and I saw a blog post, and this was when I was trying to get into sound. And I saw a blog post that said, improve your sound. And I said, cool. I click on it, and it's telling me to take my Rode video mic off my camera and putting it onto a boom pole. And I thought, that is the stupidest, worst idea I've ever heard of. I mean, yeah, you did definitely increase your ratio so that it's getting better signal to noise. But what? Like, that's terrible advice. So I said, I can do better than that. So I started a blog. We started with a film slate. Just how to improve a film slate that you buy for $17 off Amazon. And it was like, if you bought this $17 slate, it's missing some stuff. Here's what you can add to it, and here's how you can permanently add to acrylic slates. You know, it's like how to put a Sharpie and nail polish over your Sharpie so that it can't come off ever permanently because the chemicals in the nail polish bond with the acrylic at a chemical level, so they can't be separated. And that was my first blog post. And from there, it was nothing but just a lot of the DIY stuff that you can do yourself that is higher grade than what I was seeing on other blogs. Other people were like, oh, let me show you a DIY boom pole. And it was like a painter's pole that they had like gaff taped the mic mount to. And I'm like, no, that's not, you didn't increase. So like when we do a blog post tutorial over at Wave Report, I like to have a standard that what we're doing is at least or better than what is currently on the market. Like when we did the bag, the deployment bag, we were using a Connor military bag. It was called a butt pack. And it's what the military guys use to carry some stuff. And we're using M14 Molly clips for wireless holders. Well, if you look at the material of that bag and the build quality, it's nearly as good as what's on the market, especially when you're looking at like a Porter Brace bag meant for the F8. They have like no internal structure. It's just a sack. And there's a couple of others that like, they're just like nylon sacks that they slide your bag into. They're not really good workplaces. You know, it's not a K-Tech, it's not a Orca style bag. They're just sacks. Well, if you look at what we make, we were making the exact same stuff for like $30 versus they want, you know, 150 for theirs. And that's kind of always the standard is if we're making stuff like an adapter cable, if we're making little wired up projects, you know, I just try to make it to the exact same standard that's on the market. And that's always been kind of the goal of the blog. And from there, it naturally progressed into product reviews. Because when you're trying to do a blog on a schedule, as you know, you try to stick to that schedule. And it's like, okay, I didn't build anything this week. I didn't do a DIY project this week. I guess I have this piece of gear that I use. Let's review it. Yeah. And that's kind of how that started. And it was at first, it started out as review everything that I owned. You know, it was like, I use this. Yeah. It's the easiest to get a hold of. And after doing that for a year and a half of reviewing everything I purchased, only then after that kind of dedication was I able to email people and say, hey, can I get a demo unit? Can I get a loaner of your wireless system? Can I get a loaner of your whatever to kind of play with and review? And they want to see a track record. So if you're thinking, you know, I want to start a blog out there, a camera, whatever, you know a blog I would really get down on that does not exist for filmmakers? That's a crafty blog. I want a craft service to start reviewing cookies.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Nice.
I want a cookie review blog, but from a crafty perspective. Like, tell me what the melting temperature of Oreos is, so I know not to put Oreos out when it's really hot. Little goofy things like that. I would love a tech blog for craft services. Like, tell me how difficult, and let's do a trial of what snacks actually get eaten and that kind of thing. Like, I would love that. That doesn't exist. I would probably get down on a Tumblr that's all about crafty.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid way to go. But that's also an interesting comment on just, again, what we've been talking about in terms of just creative content of the things that we're getting more work of, but also how an industry, again, as sound, it kind of seems like everything has got to a point, and then people are fiddling with stuff, and stuff's not really changing or adapting. But I think now, with again more and more people kind of putting their own 2 cents of things, we're actually getting a lot more development. But what do you think about just DIY culture in general? Do you think, like, so people watching now, if they they're like, brilliant, what's the first thing you would basically tell them in terms of just helping the kind of DIY kind of mindset kind of take over their operation?
So there's 2 kinds of DIY mindset. There's the DIYer that it's good enough. And then there's the DIYer that is, I want to make this worthy, right? The good enough crowd is rubbish. I mean, those are some terrible people because those are the people that give the DIY crowd a bad name. Because it could be DIY, build yourself a microphone, and it's like literally the microphone capsule they bought at Radio Shack, plugged into their cell phone, and it's like, see, we built a microphone. And there's a couple of blogs out there and YouTube channels that do that garbage, and I'm just like, this is rubbish. Like I said, like the painter pole for a boom pole. I'm like, that's it got the microphone closer, but like long term durability, use that for a feature. That's not the same. It's not. But if you were like a DIYer, and like, here's a good example. I nearly built my own boom pole. I contacted a company that made fiberglass tubes. So I was going to make a boom pole out of fiberglass, and I also made a carbon fiber. And when I started to talk to their sales reps about buying samples so I could get the right links and buy the knuckles and everything, they started to realize what I was building, and they actually ended up building it themselves as a company. And now a company that makes fiberglass and carbon fiber tubes makes only one product, a boom pole. Probably no one's ever bought it because no one's going to look on their website for a boom pole. But like, when I was building my own boom pole, I went right to what's the exact same vendor that the manufacturer uses. Where are they sourcing the material? What exactly is the 3M adhesive they're using? And there's a level of degree in DIY that, I'd probably fall way more on the extreme side of, I'm trying to get the right glue to match. And then there's the side that is like, I use duct tape. Like, don't do that. So I tell people that if you're going to go into the DIY world, lean to the extreme side of it, come out with really good products, buy the right tools and the right materials. Don't try to buy a substitute unless the substitute is better. Like, as you can see over my shoulder is my 3D printer and some stuff. And like, there wasn't a concealer on the market for the lavs I used. So I just made my own. But I'm doing this with a 3D printer. I'm not sitting there trying to figure out how to make hot glue fit into a Lego mold, and then peeling apart Legos, and I've got a hot glue concealer. Like, that's just not what I'm going to do. Very, very rarely do I think YouTubers and DIYers and that kind of stuff that make those kinds of tutorials find real success. I find that they may make internet success, but they're not monetizing it. They're not getting phone calls because of what they've done impressed a producer. I think doing it the right way, craftsmanship to your DIY, it used to was a requirement. It wasn't just, you went down to the general store and bought a brand new tractor. You didn't buy a brand new hoe, and you took the hoe and you reattached it to a brand new piece of wood. So repairing, DIY, all that stuff is true craftsmanship of owning your equipment, I believe. Adding value to the equipment that you use is what you should be asking yourself. It's not just because you can do it. It should be, am I doing it because I actually need it? Do I know this will actually benefit me? So more often than not, we do it just for ownership, as that's a good enough reason, the DIY, and it's not, because then you end up with clutter. So I think a DIYer that's wanting to get into this really needs to ask the questions of what they want to DIY, and then really start examining what's on the market that's close to what they want, and then start sourcing your vendors, sourcing your source material. The best way I think you can do that is a couple of catalogs that you should probably own if you're a DIYer. One is the McMaster catalog. They make screws and glue and fasteners and little pieces of metal. And every DIYer who wants to build something should know the McMaster catalog.
And is that
the other one?
Is that MI? Can you just spell that out, and I'll just put it in the chat.
McMaster. MC Mick.
Okay.
Yeah, McMaster.
Got you. Yeah.
I think it's just spelled that way. Like, I think it's spelled the most phonetic way possible. So the McMaster catalog is one you should just send out for and ask for. Fastenal is another one. They make little brackets for little things that you don't know you needed until you go, oh, that's what that thing is called. So if it's just like an Apple box with a hinge, well, what hinge are you going to use? Are you going to use a door hinge, or are you going to use a cabinet hinge so it hides behind the product, behind the door? So asking yourself all these questions and educating yourself, all these options, is the best way to DIY, I think. So McMaster, Uline makes a catalog, and I like to call it the Uline Bible. And it's like all things commercial. If you want to get just something, a little bottle that you might find for lotion, Uline sells it. If you're looking for a crazy, weird adhesive tape, Uline sells it. And you can buy it in bulk too, if you need a lot. Or you just need one. It's reasonably priced. But Uline, McMaster. Another one that I think is really important is get down to your Harbor Freight and sign up for your catalogs from Harbor Freight, because every DIYer needs tools. And Harbor Freight, they're a bunch of Chinese tools. And because you're DIYing, you're not actually trying to start a real wood shop or a machine shop. They work good enough, and they're going to get you started. So I think getting the right tools in your hand, getting started in that process, is something you should really start doing.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to round up this chat, but but I just wanted to kind of hand over to you in case there was any kind of final thing, kind of from everything that we've maybe talked about, or something that we haven't talked about, that you just think would be really useful for the audience to kind of hear, whether that's just a little piece of advice, just a slight kind of a trend that you're seeing, just for the kind of final thought.
Yeah, final thought. And I think that kind of, my final thought is going to be back to that original statement of attitude is everything. Try to be positive on film sets. People at the end of the day don't want to hang out with grumpy people. And I think that's more evident than ever because there's more of us. You have more competition for that job. And if you can be upbeat, you can be fun, you can be supportive and a team player, and that don't go just for your set, that goes for your community of filmmakers in your city, in your state, in your province, region, or county. Yeah, I mean, that's what the future is going to hold for our industry, is teamwork, support, and good attitude.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
And someone's really wants to know what the fiberglass boom pole name was as well.
No. No. Honestly, if you're in the market for a boom pole, go with a name brand, because at the end of the day, one thing that I was definitely, if you're not an extreme DIYer, servicing your own DIY project is just as important as making it the first place.
Yeah.
So knowing how to repair that thing that you cobbled together is really important. And for something like a boom pole, knowing how it got built is awesome. Knowing how to like fix it, go to a proper boom pole company. There's a few of them out there. K-Tech, Ambient. If you want, just go and buy a cheap boom pole. There's a great guy that's making them on eBay. I think they're called Lux Falcon or Falcon Lux or something goofy like that.
Great name.
Yeah, and I think he did essentially what I did. But you want to buy. There's sometimes like you want to buy something where it has a surface behind it. So that was probably a terrible example for me to bring up.
He said, "Okay, not worth it." Then he just made it sound like it was something amazing. So secret. Like you were keeping it.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I was still in the very early production of that DIY item, and it got nixed because they figured it out and wanted to just do it themselves and not, help me as a vendor. That was a one-off customer. I mean, I don't blame them.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I'm not going to go and just help them out and give out their name and give them a sale.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Very good. So yeah, thank you, Andrew, of course, and thanks everyone that was watching. I think we had like 50 people or something. Again, these things go on for like quite a long time, but average viewing time of about 25 minutes, which is pretty good. People are like heavily committed in this, which is damn good. So yeah, thanks to all of you guys, and of course, if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, well, shit, I didn't get to ask my question, you can always still post it in the comments below if you're watching not the live feed, but the video. And I'll put up a couple of videos that will magically appear towards the end of the video that you can watch as well. But that's enough from me until the next spontaneous kind of source of well-organized sound chat. There'll just be more videos and more good stuff as well. So I'll just hand over to Andrew for the final goodbye, and I will catch you on the flip side.
You guys have been watching Sound Chat, and I'll do the Matt Price thing. So boom, I'm out.
Boom.